Political participation in Kuwait plays a large role in preserving the national victories secured by the small Gulf nation, which is home to a democratic practice that was born when the society unanimously agreed to sanction the power to rule to the Al-Sabah family. The choosing of the Al-Sabah family to rule Kuwait therefore is a result of a democratic practice that is not too far removed from what is known today as the election process. The first Kuwaiti document with the term elections dates back to February the 22nd of 1921, when several Kuwaitis, led by Sheikh Yusuf bin Isa al-Qna'i, presented a memo to Kuwaiti ruler, proposing a consultative council to be established in the country. After transitioning to a constitutional state, the late Emir, Sheikh Abdullah Salim al-Sabah, signed a decree on August the 26th, 1961, which stated that elections for the Constitutional Assembly would be held on December the 30th, 1961, to choose 20 members in addition to 11 ministers. The government subsequently called for public elections for the nomination of the 20 members, whose mission would be to finalize Kuwait's constitution. This process was completed and secured a majority vote during a session held on November the 3rd, 1962. Sheikh Abdullah Salim ratified the constitution 9 days later. Moreover, the elections for the very first National Assembly was held on January the 23rd, 1963, after the independence of Kuwait, with 250 candidates running to be included in the 50-seat parliament. The National Assembly of Kuwait had long been the beating heart of the country's democracy, with years of passing laws and legislations aimed at progressing and developing the country on all possible domains. The state of Kuwait is witnessing one of the most democratic experiences that Kuwait's people strive for, as it is the citizens' opportunity to practice their democratic right in order to share their views, concerns, and aspirations. Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this live coverage continuing as we cover the elections here, the 4th of April, covering the 2024 parliamentary elections taking place across all 5 constituencies for its 18th legislative term. I'm Hamid Al-Jasmi, and with me today is Adla Dumoret.
In this section of the program, we focus on the legal aspects and aspirations from the future members of the parliament. As we all know, every 4 years in the state of Kuwait, the citizens exercise their democratic rights to select their representatives in the National Assembly to voice their aspirations to build the future of the country. However, for this election, an Emir decree was issued last year to dissolve the previous National Assembly and called for a new election and new members. In this democratic exercise, Kuwait is divided into 5 constituencies. Each constituency is required to put forward 10 candidates who need to earn the trust of the voters to form the 50 members of the National Assembly of the state of Kuwait.
Voting began today, Thursday morning, to elect members of the 18th Kuwaiti National Assembly to vote to whoever they see would honor their aspirations. Voters are in the process of choosing 50 representatives from 204 candidates. including 6 female candidates on a day when work in government departments was suspended so that citizens could devote themselves to exercising their electoral right. Moreover, the voting process will continue for 12 consecutive hours and is conducted according to the one electoral vote system. After the end of voting, the sorting process begins in preparation for announcing the official results and naming the winners for membership in the council for the next 4 years. Meanwhile, this year's parliamentary elections come after His Highness the Emir Sheikh Mash'al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah, may Allah protect and bless him, had dissolved the parliament and called for new elections to be held to form the 2024 parliament. The 2024 National Assembly elections is considered the second elections held during the holy month of Ramadan in Kuwait's parliamentary history, as the first election held during Ramadan was for the 14th legislative term on July 27, 2013, whereas a by-election was also held during Ramadan in the 10th constituency on December 7, 2000. During this year's election, the Kuwaiti voter is aware of the importance of taking part in the elections for the country's higher interests, and it is no surprise that Kuwaiti citizens are committed to their national entitlement. The Kuwaiti voters' fatigue of fasting will not stop Kuwaitis from performing their electoral and national duties, as their nation deserves their full commitment.
Before continuing, we should also inform our viewers that we are accompanied by several correspondents who are live right now at the scene of each of the 5 constituencies to follow up on any progress regarding the voting process and governmental efforts for the preparations to ease the voting process for everyone participating today. From the first constituency, we have our correspondent Mohammed Lanezi. Hello, Mohammed. Can you hear me? Can you please update us on the atmosphere and the voting turnout in the voting station you're at?
Yes, I can hear you, Adla.
Can you please update us?
Yes, of course. Good afternoon to you, Adla, and good afternoon to you, Adla. I'm here at Al Dariya's joint school in Al Dariya, which is accepting female voters in the first constituency. Now, the school that I am in has a total number of 3,289 registered voters and 3 committees. In the main committee, there have been a total now of 120 votes out of 1,043. And in the 2 subcommittees, in the first one, there have been 100 votes out of 1,070 registered voters. And in the second subcommittee, there have been 110 votes out of 1,176 registered voters. Now, that should be considered as a good turnout, considering that it's Ramadan and that everyone's fasting and the weather is pretty warm outside. So it's very good to see this turnout, which I'm sure will increase throughout the day, especially after Fitr. Now, it is also important to note the efforts of everyone working today to help ease the voting process, including the volunteers from the Kuwait Red Crescent Society and volunteers from other governmental institutions, who I see everywhere around the school wearing their volunteer vests and assisting everyone, either giving them directions or assisting the elderly to their voting stations to cast their votes, making sure that everyone has a chance to participate in this democratic process.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for the updates. And now from the second constituency, we have with us Mohammed Al Hajri. Mohammed, can you hear me? Mohammed, please update us on the easy flow of the voting process through the day.
Yes, I'm here on the second constituency, exactly in Yusuf bin Isa polling station, where everyone here is commanding the smooth process, which only takes about 5 to 10 minutes submitting their votes. we can see the great efforts exerted by the government to make a smooth and speedy voting process. And as I said before, Ministry of Interior oversees the entire election. As I said, Ministry of Interior oversees the entire election process from registration all the way to final results. Also in charge of security and support at the polling station. The total of voters here is 3,963, where the current attendance is 490 voters. We advise all the citizens who are eligible to vote, go to your polling station and vote for the suitable candidate who will represent you in the National Assembly. Back to you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Moving to the third constituency, where we have with us Nasser Al-Husainan. Hello, Nasser. Can you tell us how was the turnout in the voting station you're at?
Hello, Adla. I'm at the third constituency here in Kayfan at exactly Ashbilia Elementary School, and we can see that even though it's the month of Ramadan, people are still coming in big numbers to cast their votes. We urge everyone here in Kuwait to cast their vote and to cast it and to vote wisely, because this will shape the future of Kuwait and the future of people. Out of all 5 constituencies, the third constituency is the number 1 in female candidates. Back to you.
In the fourth constituency, we have Mariam Ludwaihi. Can you tell us about the participation of the citizens of the state of Kuwait in those early hours of the day?
Yes, right now I'm at Ibrahim Mhanna Al-Mhaini Elementary School in the Firdaus area at Al-Farwaniya Governorate, where there is around 20,261 eligible voters, divided into 2 electoral polling stations. Right now, in this polling station is designated for men. The turnout, to be honest with you, based on my observation, that the majority in the first 3 hours are the elderly and those with disabilities, but we have civil defense and Kuwait Red Crescent Society helping and assisting them to cast their ballots and take part in Kuwait 2024 elections. Minutes ago, we received a visit from General Director of Kuwait Municipality, Engineer Saud Al-Dabbous, to ensure the security and the services provided in and around the premises, as well as we received a visit from international media delegation and institutions came over to ensure the transparency and integrity of Kuwait elections, as it is known to be the oldest democratic practice in the region. That's all what I have for now. I will keep you updated in my next polling station.
Thank you, Mariam, for the updates. And finally, from the fifth and last constituency, we have Mohammed Al-Harbi. Mohammed, brief us on the voting turnout and the participation throughout the day.
Yes, so the voting turnout in the fifth constituency is actually really good. Even though it's Ramadan and midday, people are fasting, but still there's a huge number of people coming in through the doors, and what makes it easier on them and easier on everybody is the organizing of this whole process from the Ministry of Interior and all the other ministries. Ministry of Interior just guiding everyone through their places and polling stations to cast their votes, and the representatives of the Ministry of Justice making it very easy and smooth and quick inside while voting. And of course, not to forget, the Ministry of Information has a great big role in covering this whole amazing process. and showing Kuwait and the world how easy it is to come and cast your vote even before iftar time, so you don't have to wait actually to go after iftar, since it's very easy and it will not take a long time. It just takes a few minutes from getting inside after parking your car until you cast your vote and go outside. It's very smooth. The turnout is really good. So many people are coming in and going out from this polling station in South Sabahiyya in the 5th constituency. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you to all our correspondents across the state of Kuwait who are working hard to keep you, dear viewers, updated on the voting process and closing of the voting ballots by the minute.
The state of Kuwait is the beating beacon of democracy, as the people of Kuwait today are practicing their democratic right to choose a parliament member to represent them and portray their views, aspirations, and concerns in order to live in a more harmonious atmosphere. In fact, joining us today in the studio is our distinguished guest, Mr. Sultan al-Shamali, a lawyer and legal expert, to witness such great democratic exercise where the citizens of the state of Kuwait practice their vital role in this democratic process of Kuwait to shape a brighter future for our beloved country. Mr. Shamali, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Mohammed.
Let's begin with the first question. Democracy in the state of Kuwait, it is a part of our journey, our long, arduous journey, and democracy is firmly rooted in the country. Can you, in your own words, describe how you would portray this democracy in the last few years?
Of course, I would say democracy is embedded in the Kuwaiti DNA. You see, Kuwait is a beacon in democracy, starting from the 1960s, where the constitution had been ratified, until modern day. You have the casting votes, you have the ballots, you have where the people is sharing the authorities within policy making. So that's why it's a beacon in democracy, to my belief.
And now, what role does the Kuwaiti constitution play in the shaping of the democracy? And could you explain to us how it safeguards the citizens and their rights?
Of course, we have a democracy. The idea of a democracy is where the people is the main source of power. So we say, الشعب مصدر سلطات. The people is the main source of power. So when you choose a representative, usually that representative shares your ID. And that representative usually portrays that ID and then he implements it within the constitution and policy making. Now the policy making is what shapes our life from day to day. Exactly. We could say that legislation and executive powers working hand by hand is what I would say usually makes us as Kuwaitis life much better than not having a democracy as all.
Could you explain or give maybe a common example in the day-to-day life where the constitution is protecting the citizens' rights?
Of course, you see the constitution within itself, within its 160 clauses, you say you have the freedom of passage, you have the freedom of travel, you have the right to have a safe housing, a roof on top of your head, a medical health insurance. This is all embedded in the constitution. Now, if we didn't have a constitution, then these basic human rights, we couldn't have them in the first place. So when we choose a representative who could provide us with these basic rights, and then we could carry on this beacon and then supply us with basic rights and basic human rights. And then some things that we cannot change within our own hands. We need someone who's as strong as a representative to represent our rights and protect them within the parliament.
So that the governing authority and the people's will, there is some sort of communication between the two.
Of course, no doubt.
What shapes the members of the National Assembly in terms of how they're elected, and what criteria must the candidate meet?
Of course, you see, you have some conditions, and you have some rules if you want to represent yourself. First of all, obviously, you have to be a Kuwaiti representative. You have to surpass the age of 30. You shouldn't be having a criminal record, and which is Hamid sayyi al-sum'a. You have bad reputation and so on. If you check all of those conditions and so on, then you are eligible to represent yourself within the parliament. And as an elective being represented for the Kuwaiti citizen, then obviously you have the Kuwaiti citizens voting for you. And also these Kuwaiti citizens should also have some conditions, starting that a Kuwaiti should have Kuwaiti, which is al-jinsiyya, the Kuwaiti citizenship, which is
the national ID.
Exactly, the national ID. And it's not as simple as the civil ID.
Yeah.
It has to be the one in black, as simple as that. You have to be 21 years of age, and then you could go and vote and so on.
Yes. Now, could you give us, in your own opinion, what is the ideal member of parliament in your eyes?
I would say someone who's biased, someone who isn't in it for the fame, isn't in it for personal interest. Candidates should be chosen very carefully. You need to choose someone, because this representative will be representing the Kuwaiti society as a whole for the, inshallah, for the 4 years of term. And he has immense powers that he's going to be shape-shifting and policy-making within our Kuwaiti society.
Could you very briefly tell us what sort of powers and what kind of role a member of the parliament will play?
Straight from the back, he would be policy-making. They could amend policy-making. They could amend constitution clauses. They could amend and make changes for the better, hopefully, in any given sector of the governmental sectors, starting from al-bi'a, the environment, starting to the municipality, and so on, as simple as that. So those represent my day-to-day, my also the dear viewers, my colleagues, and so on. It affects us from day to day, Mr. Mohammed.
We have to play our role in the democracy for the democracy to serve the rest of us.
Of course.
Well, we're going to take a very short break real quick and take a look at this report. The National Assembly of Kuwait, since its inception, has always put on display the true essence of the democratic process and practice within the country, giving the people their voice and enabling them to determine their future through various legislations and laws. Meanwhile, the state of Kuwait's electoral system is divided into 5 constituencies for membership in the National Assembly, as each constituency shall elect 10 members to the parliament, enabling voters to have the right to cast votes for one candidate in the district in which they registered. As the years have elapsed, 3 basic changes or amendments have occurred in the electoral district in the state of Kuwait, in addition to other minor amendments since the establishment of democracy here in Kuwait. More on that in the following report.
As the state of Kuwait electoral process involves a unique system of electoral districts and regional representations, this report aims to provide an overview of Kuwait's electoral districts and the distribution of regions within these districts. Kuwait is divided into 5 electoral districts, each representing different geographical areas within the country. The first electoral district, this district encompasses various areas, including the Capital Governorate, Hawalli Governorate, and Mubarak al-Kabir Governorate. The second electoral district. The second district represents the Al-Ahmadi Governorate. The third electoral district. This district includes the Farwaniya Governorate. The fourth electoral district. The fourth district represents the Jahra Governorate. The fifth electoral district. This district encompasses the Hawalli Governorate. Number of regions within the districts. Each electoral district is further divided into several regions, each with its own unique characteristics and demographics. The number of regions within each electoral district varies, with some districts having more regions than others. The distribution of regions within the electoral district is as follows. The first electoral district, the Capital Governorate. It includes several regions such as Sharq, Murghab, Dasman, and Kuwait City. Hawalli Governorate. Regions within this governorate includes Hawalli, Salmiya, and Mishraf. Mubarak al-Kabir Governorate. This governorate consists of regions like Sabah al-Salim and Mubarak al-Kabir City. The second electoral district, Al-Ahmadi Governorate. It comprises regions such as Al-Ahmadi City, Funtas, and Mahbula. Third electoral district, Farwaniya Governorate. Regions within this governorate includes Farwaniya City, Abbasiyya and Khaitan. The 4th electoral district, Jahra Governorate. It includes regions like Jahra City, Naim and Jahra Industrial. The 5th electoral district, Hawalli Governorate. Apart from being part of the 1st electoral district, it includes regions like Hawalli, Salmiya and Mishraf. Kuwait's electoral system is structured around 5 electoral districts, each representing different geographical areas within the country. These districts are further divided into regions, ensuring fair representation and participation in the electoral process. Understanding the distribution of regions within each electoral district is crucial for effective governance and democratic practices in Kuwait.
Across the 5 constituencies, well-trained teams of the Red Crescent Society volunteers are partaking in the organization of the 2024 National Assembly elections scheduled today, reflecting their keenness and belief in the democratic process in the state of Kuwait. Now joining us via a phone call is Mr. Anwar Al-Hassawi, Deputy Chairman of Kuwait's Red Crescent Society, to elaborate further on the role of organization during this election, as the state of Kuwait is witnessing a great democratic practice in which candidates are competing to earn a seat in the National Assembly to portray people's views and aspirations to further progress their beloved country. Hello, Mr. Anwar. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Hello.
How is Kuwait Red Crescent Society participating during the 2024 National Assembly elections?
Yes, as usual, Kuwait Red Crescent has deployed 400 volunteers across 26 schools around Kuwait. It consists of course, ladies and men. These volunteers are helping elderly people, pushing chairs, supporting them by pushing wheelchairs, and provide support for citizens who cannot go there, either next to the schools or in case they cannot come from home, they can help them, bring them from home to vote and bring them back. And they're being trained for these things because we are participating in all elections that happen in Kuwait. And of course, the weather, if it's hot, they can help them. They can bring umbrellas for them. They can, of course, test their blood pressure. All these volunteers, of course, we have trained them in the society, the Kuwait Radical Society, and they are all over the schools to help them.
Can you describe to us the coordination between the KRCS and the other government institutions?
What we are part of course, the government. We are the humanitarian society, and of course we are helping it either in this elections or in other things. Always Kuwait Red Crescent volunteers. They are around 1,500 volunteers. They've been trained to do these things, and what we are doing since the morning, early in the morning. They'll be there since 11 o'clock, and of course they will stay until 1 o'clock in the night for anybody who needs any help, and also to help Ministry of Interior to make it smooth and to encourage people to come and vote, because this is democracy in Kuwait. As His Highness the Emir has asked everybody to go there, we are also encouraging everyone to go there. Always it's nice and always it's good for Kuwait to have as much as voters to vote for the right person.
Mr. Anwar, is there any advice you have for people with certain conditions, or just general advice for the day that you would like to leave for the audience?
Yes, I ask them if they need any help. They will see them, our volunteers that are in front of the school. They can ask them whether to take them from the car until they vote and they bring them back, or in case they cannot come to the school, they can go to the house and bring them if they need. Some of them they need some medicines. Some elderly people, of course, we have everything there. Whoever need anything, we can do for him.
Thank you, Mr. Anwar, Deputy Chairman of Kuwait's Red Crescent Society. Now back to you, Mohammed.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before we continue our interview with our esteemed guest, Mr. Shamali, a lawyer and legal expert, we'd like to take a look at this following report, which looks at the march of the democratic life in Kuwait from the era of the emirate to the era of the state, accompanied by the constitution and sovereignty, which is the path that's witnessed developments as the ruler and the ruled gathered daily in constant and continuous meetings, known today as the National Assembly. Moreover, the relationship between the ruler and the citizens adopted the Shura approach, as the Kuwaiti democracy is a distinct experience in which the individuals dissolve within the group to achieve greater peace and stability. More in this report. From the early days of Sheikh Sabah I, the state of Kuwait has been guided by the principle of Shura, setting the foundation for a vibrant political landscape. This commitment to collective decision-making has not only fostered social and cultural advancements, but has also paved the way for Kuwait to emerge as a pioneer in parliamentary and democratic practices within the region. The principle of Shura, emphasizing consultation and consensus building, has been deeply ingrained in Kuwait's political fabric, uniting the people and the Al Sabah family in a shared vision of shaping a prosperous future and preserving a proud heritage. This collaborative spirit has propelled Kuwait's political journey, marked by a legacy of active participation and significant parliamentary achievements that have distinguished the country on the regional stage. Kuwait's democratic experience stands as a shining example among neighboring nations, characterized by a unique blend of tradition and modernity. The traditional Shura methodology, which brought together a diverse group of Kuwaiti merchants, scholars, and members of the ruling family in the 1920s, laid the groundwork for inclusive governance and participatory decision-making. During the era of Sheikh Ahmed al-Jaber al-Sabah, spanning from 1921 till 1950, Kuwait witnessed the establishment of the Shura Council as a true reflection of its societal values and aspirations. Comprising of 12 appointed members, the council served as an advisory body, embodying the spirit of collaboration and unity that defines Kuwait's political landscape. The formation of the council not only symbolized a commitment to democratic principles, but also set the stage for significant milestones in Kuwait's constitutional development. In 1921, Kuwait unveiled its first written constitutional document, a testament to the country's progressive outlook and dedication to fostering a system of governance that values the voices of its people. Moreover, the creation of the Consultative Council, composed of esteemed merchants and scholars, further underscored Kuwait's dedication to inclusive decision-making processes and the promotion of democratic values. This consultative body played a crucial role in shaping Kuwait's political landscape, laying the groundwork for a future defined by transparency, accountability, and active participation of its citizens. From the early days of Sheikh. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to continue our interview with Mr. Al-Shamali. Mr. Sultan, what is your view on the 5 constituencies and the one vote policy?
So Mohammed, I think this is a fair share of powers and voting, because during the reforms for the past years, you have different constituencies, more than 10, you have more than 4 votes for each part, and that, to my belief, is not fair. So voting for one candidate and casting that vote in the ballots is more fair, because you're projecting your ideas into that candidate. Other than that, it would be randomly selected, and I don't think this is a fair share to the Kuwaiti democracy.
Could you explain why the 4-vote system, in your opinion, isn't necessarily a good thing?
I say because you could use it with bad intentions, with malintentions. You could, okay, you have one candidate, but in the other ballots, you would choose for 1, 2, 3, 4. And the 2, 3, 4, you would be on previous arrangement. Okay, I'm going to sell this vote, because it could happen, Mr. Mohammed. So eliminating that is by using the one vote system. And it's a solution to that problem which we faced, say, 10 years ago.
In fact, many of our elections.
Exactly.
Hopefully this one will change the course and correct things.
Exactly.
But in the recent speeches and statements delivered by His Highness the Emir, he portrayed numerous stances to support both the legislative and the executive authorities in Kuwait. How would you describe his support to both of these branches?
Of course, we're going to need harmony within two powers. You're talking about the legislative power and you're talking about the executive power. Both powers are in huge and mainly that take within our democracy. One is issuing the law and shape-shifting the law, and the one is implementing the law. So if there is no cooperation between the two, then there is no a full term or cooperation that we could use in advance. So if not, then we're going to have the same problem which we faced before, which is continuing a term within 2 years and then being dissolved. If there is harmony, we're going to have a full 4 years, and we could use the best benefits of that full 4 years.
Now, what impact do you believe his words have left specifically on the people, not only within the authorities and institutions, but across the entire country?
As in?
What impact did his speech and his words have on people?
Of course, the impact is he made people realize that the importance of voting and choosing the right candidate and eliminating any other incentives such as using these elections for personal need, choosing a candidate that's not fit to his role, but mainly because of his name or his tribe name and so on. No, you need to choose someone who is fit and fit for this huge, immense power. Because I say, and I choose to say that it's immense power, because if not, then it's going to take us back, and it would affect our democracy as a whole.
In the absence of order, you will just have disorder and
chaos.
One last question really quick. In your opinion, how would you characterize this current election in the context of Kuwait's progressions throughout our democratic journey in the previous years? How would you describe this one?
Of course, I would say in contrast to neighboring countries, our democracy have projected a good example into how a normal citizen would choose his candidate. Now, before, we didn't have even the women participating in the elections. And now we could see, ever since 2005, women are of vital need for our democracy and participating within this democracy. It's at the end of the day half of the society, if not all, because the sister and the mother and the daughter are all a huge part of our day-to-day life and our democracy. So shape-shifting that to implementing that to our democracy and so on is a huge aspect to our democracy.
Now, since you brought up women's role in the democratic life of Kuwait, how have you seen that progress in the previous years,
of course,
since 2005?
For example, before an average Kuwaiti citizen, a woman, she couldn't even vote, but reforms have been made and she could be participating within the elections. Fast forward, she is also elected as a candidate, and we've seen them within the parliament with a huge role in the parliament. We've seen them also participating into roles that were forbidden in the past, such as being judges and deputy of the prosecution and so on. So the women and our daughters and sisters and mothers are participating into changing our lives for the better. Mr. Mohammed.
Now, we'll continue with that. You bring up a very good point, but we'll get back to that in a bit. We'll just have to take a quick break to look at this following report. In fact, as the Kuwaiti voters across the country's 5 constituencies prepare to participate in the National Assembly's elections, a period of election silence descends upon the state of Kuwait. This moment of quiet reflection allows for the voters to carefully consider their choices and engage in the democratic process with a sense of unity and harmony as they select representatives for the National Assembly. The details follow in this report.
In the lead-up to Election Day in Kuwait, citizens are enveloped in a spirit of patriotism and democratic fervor as they prepare to exercise their right to vote. Against the backdrop of election silence, a practice synonymous with pre-election periods, Kuwait showcases its commitment to fostering a democratic atmosphere under the guidance of Their Highness, our wise leadership. Election silence, known by various names such as pre-election silence or campaign silence, is a designated period that precedes election day and extends until the conclusion of voting. This interval is characterized by restrictions on any form of electoral campaigning aimed at influencing voters' decisions in favor of specific candidates or electoral committees. The essence of election silence lies in providing voters with conducive environment to deliberate and make informed electoral choices free from external influences. It serves as a time for introspection, enabling individuals to weigh their options and select candidates based on their merits and qualifications. During the National Assembly election in Kuwait, the Ministry of Interior issues directives to local media outlets to uphold election silence regulations. These guidelines prohibit the coverage and promotion of candidates through interviews, reports, or programs on the day of the election or the preceding day, ensuring level playing field for all contenders. Violations of election silence regulations, including unauthorized media activities related to candidates' campaigns, are subject to penalties, as stipulated by the Ministry of Interior. The objective of these measures is to safeguard the integrity of the electoral process and uphold the principles of fairness and transparency in Kuwait's democratic framework. By fostering an environment of pre-election silence, Kuwait aims to empower voters to make informed decisions and actively participate in shaping the country's political landscape. This practice underscores the nation's commitment to democratic values and underscores the importance of ensuring a neutral and professional electoral experience for all citizens.
And we're back with our guest, Mr. Sultan Shimali. Now, Mr. Sultan, could you describe to us the powers and the responsibilities of the National Assembly within Kuwait's democratic system, particularly in terms of legislation and oversight?
Of course, you're describing, Ms. Mohammed, the role of the democracy within Kuwait. Legislation is where we can choose the 50 candidates, and after they've been ratified before His Highness the Emir, and they would get this responsibility, immunity, and so on, the whole package. Only then they could start shape-shifting and policy making within the National Assembly. And that is a huge aspect within the democracy, such as I said previously. Yeah. You could have a مشروع بقانون, which is an application for the law and amends of the law. And then that would be ratified after there is a majority voting on that law. And obviously you would have opposition, you would have approval from both sides within the National Assembly.
Yeah, there would be some sort of discussion and debate on the law to hopefully find the greater good for the population.
Exactly.
How does Kuwait ensure the fair representation of the diverse population in Kuwait within the National Assembly, considering the factors such as age and gender?
Of course, you see, Kuwait is divided into different governance. You have Hawali, you have Al-Rig'i, Farwaniya, you have Al-Asima, which is Kuwait City, you have Al-Jahra, and you have Al-Ahmadi, and lastly, Mbarak Al-Kabir. Now, based on these 6 provinces, you have the casting of the votes. And each nominee, each candidate would be representative of that da'ira, which we see
constituency.
Exactly. And you could only choose based on where you registered. For example, myself, Sultan, I'm registered within the da'ira thalta, the third round.
Yeah.
And then only I could choose the candidates registered in that round.
Yes.
I could not choose, for example, a different governance.
In the fourth or the fifth.
Exactly, because they project my needs within that part. I wouldn't be going ahead and choosing, nor it's legal to choose someone different from my governance. For example, me in Jabriya, which is allocated with Hawali, I cannot choose someone who's set in, for example, Al-Farwaniya or Kuwait City and so on.
Now, is this a way to avoid any corruption or to remove the possibility of corruption?
I would say it has its advantages and disadvantages. The advantages would be that this candidate is already from this same round, so he knows what I need within my area. And the disadvantages, for example, people who move their accommodations. Now, these people, because Kuwait at the end of the day is a small country, Mr. Mohammed, and choosing between candidates is not of huge differences. And some people would actually choose someone who they project their ideas better in the National Assembly, but they cannot do so because he's not in the same
constituency, although he's across the street right there.
Exactly.
True.
Exactly.
And now, what mechanisms are there in place to promote the transparency and the accountability in the National Assembly elections? And how does the electoral process foster public trust in the democratic system?
Of course. For example, these elections cannot be rigged. You have to go into these where they've been set up, supervised by a judge, and also supervised by the deputies of the prosecution. You have a casting stand, and then you vote within that stand. No one is allowed to see who you vote for. For example, there is outside pressure. This outside pressure is eliminated as soon as you're inside this hall where you vote for your candidate.
Could you briefly give an example of outside pressure, what that means?
For example, you have your peer pressure, you have your cousins, you have your friend asking you, please go and vote for this guy, even though you don't
necessarily want to.
Exactly, necessarily even agree with what he projects, and he asks for IDs. As in reforms within the National Assembly. So, because you also don't want this friend come into differences between you and him, so you say, "Khalas, okay," you submit into that pressure. But as soon as you go inside, no one would ever know. Even that friend or that cousin or that brother ask you to do so, you could even vote for your own self, projecting your own IDs.
Now, Mr. Sultan, if you could just hold on to that note real quick, we have to take a small quick break. Kuwaiti women have played a vital role in the upbringing of Kuwaiti society as they have proved themselves worthy of their political rights. The struggle of Kuwaiti women and their long journey is crowned with the adoption of their constitutional and political rights with the support of their fellow men in many parliamentary assemblies. During the democratic process of Kuwait and through the numerous parliaments, there were many efforts to involve women in political life through official channels and activating their social role to advance the nation's march forward. More on that in the following report.
A historical milestone which signaled the role of women's empowerment in Kuwait happened in 2005, when women first obtained the right to vote and stand for election. This pivotal moment enabled Massouma El-Mbarak to become the first female minister in the history of the nation. In another major breakthrough for the country, 4 women were elected to the National Assembly 4 years later, on May 16, 2009, gaining seats in Parliament for the first time. Asil Al-Awadi and Rulla Deshti were among the winners in the 3rd District, while former Health Minister Massouma El-Mbarak and Salwa Al-Jassa also secured seats in Parliament. Their electoral success began a new chapter in Kuwait's political history, in which women became active contributors to the democratic process of the country. Additionally, in April 2006, women exercised the right to vote and run for the municipal council for the first time, during which Jinan Bushehri became the first woman to run in the elections. The Kuwaiti leadership played a huge role in these achievements and continued to support the empowerment of women. Kuwaiti women are expecting more triumphs under the wise leadership of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Mish'al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah. May Allah bless and protect him.
Emergency medical teams are considered the backbone of effective response to urgent cases, as the Ministry of Health's policy is based on improving and developing medical services in the smooth running of the 2024 elections. Joining us now via a phone call is Mr. Osama Al-Medhin, Chief Emergency Medical Technician, partaking in the 2024 National Assembly elections. Good afternoon, Mr. Osama. Thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on your show.
How is the medical emergency partaking during the 2024 National Assembly elections?
Well, our department is spread out through the country from the northern area to the southern area, with all the schools that have elections in it. It's about 123 schools that have elections, and 5 of them, they are main schools, and the other 118, they are branches, and we're covering the whole area and the whole amount of schools with a total of 655 participants of EMTs and paramedics. And we have about 25 ambulance vehicles stationed in those areas. And of course, we are working on shifts from the beginning of the elections. We have 3 shifts that goes through the whole election time from 12 until 12 midnight. And of course, the main schools, which is 5 schools, they're going to stay overtime. And we will have another shift that's going to stay with them until they finish sorting all the names.
Can you describe to our viewers how your teams have prepared for this election?
Describe, sorry, again?
How did your teams prepare for this election?
Preparation was like 2 weeks ago. As soon as we found out the date of the election, we start having the meetings with all the organizations for the elections, as far as the Ministry of Interior and other areas and Red Crescent, and prepare ourselves to be there and make sure that we are there for the health and safety for everybody who are going for elections, especially today, because today is actually is still Ramadan, and it's one of the days, that holy days, that especially people go for Qiyam prayers later on tonight. So we have to rearrange all our EMTs and paramedics and make sure that we have enough support to be there during the elections, and then after that for the Salat Qiyam, inshallah.
And what advice would you like to give to citizens heading to the voting stations right now?
Well, the most important thing is for people who have chronic diseases and people who have illnesses that require that taking their medications, just don't forget your medication. If you're going to go there to give your vote and you think it's going to be a long time, take your medication with you. Otherwise, you could take your medications and come like after Futur. People who are there now, please try to look out for directions for the clinic. We have each school, they have a clinic. There's medical staff, there's nurse staff, and there's EMTs and paramedics. They are there for you in case anything happens. Don't hesitate to ask around you. There's people volunteer from Red Crescent, and people are spread out through the schools to help you if you have any problem. And don't wait until the problem happens. If you don't feel well, please alert other people to take you to the clinic, and they will give you the medical attention. And if you need to be transferred to the hospital, then they will do that.
Thank you for your insight and your efforts in this year's elections, Mr. Osama. Let's take a quick break.
In a nation where unity is strength, where every voice matters, the state of Kuwait unites us. On the 4th of April, Election Day arrives. A day where the nation's heartbeat resonates in every vote cast. It's a day of empowerment, a day of choice, where the future is shaped by the will of the people. Collecting the voice of the nation. Choose your future. Be part of the change and vote on the 4th of April.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the live coverage of the 2024 National Assembly elections. And we continue our interview here with our distinguished guest, lawyer and legal expert, Mr. Sultan Shimmari. Mr. Sultan, could you tell us what are the legislations that must be approved to speed up the transition or the progress with the global world?
Of course, for example, we have the 2035 vision, which His Highness, the late Emir Sabah Al-Ahmed, projected as a huge reforms for our economy here in Kuwait, shifting from an oil-dependent country to a multi-diverse economy country. Say, for example, tourism, infrastructure, education, and so on. This 2035, we've already taken initiative, and you can see it from ministries, policy making, and so on. These all have been projected. So, for example, in the past, a foreigner or an expat who wishes to create a company here in Kuwait would only be available if he would own up to 49% of that company.
Correct, yeah.
And a Kuwaiti would own up to 51% of that company. Now, because of KIDIPA, which is a huge part of the 2035 vision, have reflected that within the same ID. Meaning, now a company, a foreign company, or a foreigner here residing in Kuwait could own 100% of that company. Although there's regulations and exemptions that he needs to follow up within KIDIPA, which is the Kuwait Direct Foreign Investment Authority, and he would get a full ownership of that company. So these are minor things that I would say that have been of a huge significant projection within the 2035, and also helping immense within our economy.
And that's a huge change.
Of course, exactly.
Now you are allowing a foreigner to come and fully claim and own the
Mr.
company.
Mohammed, you're talking about a huge difference between the 40 years before. 40 years of the Kuwaiti economy, you could never have that. Now within only 5 years, implementing that within the Ministry of Commerce.
And this is a huge attraction to any foreign investments from the region or the international world.
You have also incentives to actually bring up and starting up a business here in Kuwait, starting with tax exemptions. You wouldn't have that in any given country. Kuwait has zero taxes enforced in businesses here in Kuwait.
That is a luxury that we as a people and as a nation, we benefit from greatly. And the idea is that this opening up the doors to the foreign investors and foreign owners of companies should help in diversifying the economy, right?
Exactly.
But for the other question that we have here for you, could you discuss the recent reforms or amendments to Kuwait's constitution, or the electoral process at least, and how it's enhancing democratic governance and citizens' participation?
Of course, like I said, you have, when you're casting your vote within the ballots, and it's not of a huge difference given the fact that it's only the reforms within 5 years, Mr. Mohammed. But they're able to have the validity of that elections is something that I need to even distinguish a whole episode just to talk about, because it's a huge reform, Mr. Mohammed, a huge reform within the validity of that elections. Like I said before, you could cast 4 votes, choosing 4 candidates, and I know that itself would upset some of our viewers themselves. But to be fair, you're choosing one candidate who's projecting your own projection for what's best for our economy, and we didn't have that in the past. And going in the ballots and choosing your candidate and not having any outside interference is within itself a huge aspect of the democracy and validity of our elections.
In fact, His Highness the Emir, in a recent speech, he said that it's your duty. It's not just an option you have, it is your patriotic duty to go and vote.
Exactly.
On this sentiment, how would you describe this sentiment to the viewers at home?
Of course, I would say, such as His Highness Emir Mishal Sabah Al-Ahmed, he said himself that it's a patriotic duty to casting your votes and not having or even refraining from voting. Because some people said, I'm going to refrain from voting, I don't see there's any use of it, I'm going to need to have a personal need or incentive to go and vote. No, it's your patriotic duty to go and vote, because you're casting your own projections and not letting anything else try and sabotage this, we say, عرس الديمقراطي, this democracy that I proudly say, in contrast to neighboring countries who don't have this they don't have this privilege.
This advantage.
Exactly.
In fact, Kuwait is one of the oldest democracies in the region.
Exactly.
And I mentioned this earlier, but Kuwaiti women have proved vital in making or breaking candidates' chances for the election. Could you tell us, how do you find the importance of their participation in both voting and running for a member?
Of course. Describing this question, Mr. Mohammed, we're going to have to take it back to its roots. Kuwait is an autocratic country, meaning the ruling family shares their powers with the people.
Correct.
And I insist on what I'm saying, Mr. Mohammed. You won't be finding that in neighboring countries as we find it here in Kuwait. And because of Kuwait sharing their powers, and His Highness exercises his powers within his representatives of the cabinet, choosing the Prime Minister, then he would cast that within his Prime Ministers in his cabinet. In 2005, we saw that women taking and partaking within the elections, being the Ma'soum al-Mubarak, the first minister to ever be electedly within the National Assembly.
Yes.
And so on. So this is all projections of how women are actually partaking within the National Assembly, the executive body of the Kuwaiti government, and so on.
Now we're seeing a wide participation from people of all ages, the old and the young, but specifically the youth in Kuwait seem to have been a lot more active politically in the recent years. What is your opinion about the youth involvement in this election?
Of course, to have any major reforms, you have to get the youth to be involved. We've seen within history where the youth have been taking part within rallies, within policy making, being elected, and so on. We've seen presidents at the age of 30 making a huge differences within their country. And we could project that in Kuwait. We could learn from their experiences as a democracy. So in order to have a huge reform in Kuwait for the future, for a better future, we need to take the youth into consideration. And the youth themselves have been proposing, have been casting their opinions, reflecting their own ideas on the National Assembly. And we've seen, for example, one of the members of the parliament, which is Al-Babtain, being elected only at the age of 30.
That's the deadline.
Exactly.
That's the minimum age.
So, and he have been making a huge reforms within the National Assembly, only with 30 years of age.
So do you think this is promising for the youth of Kuwait, that it gives them some motivation? It gives them a sense that my voice matters?
Absolutely, Mr. Mohammed, absolutely. Without his voice, he could not project his ideas and policy making.
Now, what kind of obstacles or at least challenges do you see facing this parliament and future parliaments in Kuwait?
I would say the mistrust within the Kuwaiti society. We all know that the national parliament, the term is 4 years.
Correct.
And then it gets dissolved, and then there's a renewal for that assembly. But we haven't been finding a full 4 years into force. They've always been dissolved within the first year, within the second year. So this is the public mistrust within the Kuwaiti society.
Could you elaborate on the role required for the legislative authority regarding issues of strengthening the country's sustainability?
Of course, you would see the sustainability, and this is a fair share of that, Mr. Mohammed. Electing your candidate is actually sustainability to our democracy and protecting our rights. You wouldn't finding someone who says that I'm being casted out within these elections because I cannot reach my voice within the National Assembly. No, you voting and going into the elections is actually you partaking and reaching your voice. And this, after all, is a result of sustainability here in Kuwait.
Now, for a final question, we'll have to return to our phone calls and correspondence. What are some common issues that dominate discussion during the Parliament's elections debate?
Of course, you would be talking about major topics such as education, reforms within the infrastructure, the streets, trying to have incentives for a foreigner to open businesses here in Kuwait and having tax exemptions, which we already do, Mr. Mohammed. These are all things that need to be taken part within the National Assembly.
Well, on that note, Mr. Shamali, we'll continue with a few more questions. But real quick, we'll take a short break to look at this following report that will shed light on the spirit of the democratic practice in the state of Kuwait that had begun since the year 1752, when the society agreed at the time to nominate the Al-Sabah family as the rulers of the state of Kuwait through what was known as unanimity and consultation. Meanwhile, the National Assembly has succeeded to be the democratic tool that gives a chance to all people in the state of Kuwait to give their views and participate in decision making. More on that in the following report. Political participation in Kuwait plays a large role in preserving the national victories secured by the small Gulf nation, which is home to a democratic practice that was born when the society unanimously agreed to sanction the power to rule to the Al-Sabah family. The choosing of the Al-Sabah family to rule Kuwait therefore is a result of a democratic practice that is not too far removed from what is known today as the election process. The first Kuwaiti document with the term elections dates back to February the 22nd of 1921, when several Kuwaitis, led by Sheikh Yusuf bin Isa al-Qna'i, presented a memo to Kuwaiti ruler, proposing a consultative council to be established in the country. After transitioning to a constitutional state, the late Emir, Sheikh Abdullah Salim al-Sabah, signed a decree on August the 26th, 1961, which stated that elections for the Constitutional Assembly would be held on December the 30th, 1961, to choose 20 members in addition to 11 ministers. The government subsequently called for public elections for the nomination of the 20 members, whose mission would be to finalize Kuwait's constitution. This process was completed and secured a majority vote during a session held on November the 3rd, 1962. Sheikh Abdullah Salim ratified the constitution 9 days later. Moreover, the elections for the very first National Assembly was held on January the 23rd, 1963, after the independence of Kuwait, with 250 candidates running to be included in the 50-seat parliament. The National Assembly of Kuwait had long been the beating heart of the country's democracy, with years of passing laws and legislations aimed at progressing and developing the country on all possible domains. The state of Kuwait is witnessing one of the most democratic experiences that Kuwait's people strive for, as it is the citizens' opportunity to practice their democratic right in order to share their views, concerns, and aspirations. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to head back to our correspondents out there in the media center at Grand Hyatt Hotel.
Dear viewers, let's head back to our correspondent in the media center at Grand Hyatt Hotel to update us about any recent progress. From the media center in Grand Hyatt Hotel, we have with us our correspondent Ali Akbar. Hello, Ali.
Hello. Hi.
Can you please elaborate more on the presence of local and international media that are covering the elections?
Yes, so there are multiple national media members that are here present in the media center, both in KTV and the radio. When it comes to international outlets, there is Sky News Arabic, and there's multiple delegations from multiple countries, either neighboring or international, that are present right now, and they are provided field trips to each constituency, to polling stations to overlook the democratic process.
Thank you, Ali.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our interview with Mr. Sultan Al-Shammali. Mr. Sultan, could you quickly elaborate on the role required from the legislative authority regarding the issue of strengthening the country's sustainability?
Of course, such as previously stated, Mr. Mohammed, the legislation partakes into, after the National Assembly ratify their law, the legislation part take on the part into making that law into force. So if there's always, which we hope for, Mr. Mohammed, is there's harmony between the two legislating bodies, the executive body and the legislative body. So if they're going to take it into consideration, then they're going to take it into force. And that's how they're going to have to do between two bodies.
Now, saying that is the day of the election, I'm sure you're busy and you have things to do. But is there anything you'd like to leave to our viewers at home watching?
I would like to say, Mr. Mohammed, please choose your candidate after consideration and choose what's best for the Kuwaiti as a whole, because he's going to be fighting for your rights within the National Assembly.
Well, Mr. Sultan Al-Shammali, thank you very much for your insight and your time and sharing your knowledge with the viewers.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Mohammed.
I hope it's a great election day for all of us here.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Sultan Al-Shammali, the lawyer and legal expert who joined us today to cover this 2024 parliamentary election. We'll be back momentarily.
The Constitution reflects the awareness its drafters had of the country's society and its needs. It was a document ahead of its time and was one that surpassed the originality of others at the time. The first signs of a constitutional movement appeared in the mid-20th century, further advanced by His Highness the late Emir, Sheikh Abdullah Salim al-Mubarak al-Sabah. The constitution issued under Sheikh Abdullah's auspices outlines social and political principles, including individual rights, public freedoms, and the separation of powers. 2 months following independence from Britain, an Emiri decree was issued calling for general elections to elect members of the Constituent Assembly to work on drafting a constitution that enacts modern legislation and monitors the operations of the ministries. This council was considered a transitional regulatory system, yet it opened the doors to public freedoms and consolidated the rules of justice, equality, and judicial independence. The Constitution is the tool used to regulate the affairs of government in the state, and it defines the core functions of public authorities, which is the foundation for all legal rules in the state. The Kuwaiti Constitution is based on the intellectual concepts of the people of Kuwait, rulers and the ruled. Therefore, it was keen to have it reflect the country's indoctrinated principles of historical, national, religious, and ideological affiliations. Kuwaiti people have the right to engage in political circles and the opportunity to live in a democratic society that guarantees free elections, which enables them to voice their opinions and choose their representatives. Generations of Kuwaitis understand the importance of the accomplishment of drafting a constitution that serves as a protective shield for all the people of Kuwait. This constitution, like Kuwait's 3 historical walls, defends the country and preserves its legitimacy and independent existence on the world stage.
In a nation where unity is strength, where every voice matters, the state of Kuwait unites us. On the 4th of April, Election Day arrives. A day where the nation's heartbeat resonates in every vote cast. It's a day of empowerment, a day of choice, where the future is shaped by the will of the people. Collecting the voice of the nation. Choose your future. Be part of the change and vote on the 4th of April.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that, the 18th legislative term of the National Assembly is built upon what has already been established by the vision of the political leadership to provide a better and brighter future for everyone living here in this great country and to build the well-established steps of the state of Kuwait as a regional, economic, and political state.
Yes, Mohammed, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back with more live programs covering the elections, turnouts, and updates as we now leave you with the hope that you were well informed with latest updates. Have a pleasant afternoon and goodbye.
Take care.
Kuwait's memory recalls the 11th of November 1962 when the late Emir Sheikh Abdullah Salim al-Sabah ratified the Kuwaiti Constitution, which established a milestone in the country's journey and the history of its political life. The late Emir Sheikh Abdullah Salim al-Sabah issued a decree on August 1961 forming a higher council tasked with working on a law organizing constituent assembly elections. The law divided the country into 10 electoral areas, from which 2 representatives would be elected via secret ballot. Members of assembly would amount to 20 elected representatives as well as appointed ministers. The law also specified that an elected representative must not be younger than 30 years of age and that he masters the Arabic language in reading and writing. On December the 30th of the same year, elections were held and 20 members were elected. They were joined by appointed members of government, dubbed transitional government, formed on January the 17th by decree of Emir. The government included 14 ministers, 11 of which were members of the royal family and 3 were elected members. In the morning of January the 20th, 1962, Sheikh Abdullah Salim inaugurated the assembly in a speech declaring principles of democracy and describing it as a pillar of the modern state, and affirmed that it's the duty of the assembly to propose modes of governance qualified for a democratic future. During that session, Abdul Latif Thnayan al-Qanim was chosen as Assembly Speaker and Dr. Ahmed al-Khatib as Deputy. The Assembly formed a committee of 5 personnel to draft the Constitution, including all of Yaqub al-Hmedi, Hmoud al-Khalid, Abdul Latif al-Qanim, Saud al-Abd al-Razzaq, as well as the late Sheikh Saad al-Abdullah al-Sabah. The committee accomplished its task in 23 meetings between March of 1962 and October of the same year, and handed in its report to the Assembly, which discussed and voted on it. The Emir rectified and published the Constitution on November the 11th, 1962. Assembly Speaker at the time, Abdul Latif al-Qanim, stated while handing in the Constitution draft to the late Emir, principles of democracy and inspired by the reality of Kuwait in an effort to achieve the hopes of the Emir for his people. On his part, the late Emir replied, thanking the Assembly for the significant efforts in achieving the hopes and aspirations of the people for a democratic future that goes hand in hand with Kuwaiti culture and traditions. On January 23rd of the following year, and after concluding the works of the Constituent Assembly, the first National Assembly elections were held, in accordance to the newly instated Constitution, which remains to be the governing doctrine to this day. The issuance of the 1962 Constitution represents a watershed in the history of Kuwait and its democratic process.
the civil society and the non-government